began in the dead of winter, 2011. A gray chill crawled through the decaying streets of Gary, Indiana. An old steel town long forgotten by time, worn down by poverty, rust, and silence. But on the corner of Carolina Street, one house was anything but quiet. 3860 Carolina Street. A modest two-story rental, peeling paint, a sagging porch. Just another skeleton on a block of the dead. But inside, something was breathing. Latoya Ammons moved in with her 3 children and her mother, Rosa. They didn't know they were stepping into a nightmare. They thought they were moving into a home. What they found was something ancient, watching them, waiting. It started small, like all hauntings do. The porch lights flickered, despite the dead of winter and no power to them. Footsteps whispered from the upper floor when no one was there. Doors creaked open slowly, like they were sighing. And the children, they said the shadows in the living room moved. Each night the house grew colder. The children wouldn't sleep. The youngest boy said a tall man with red glowing eyes came into his room after dark. It told him things, horrible things, and told him to keep quiet. And then, one by one, the children began to change. They'd stare blankly at walls for hours, whispering to things that weren't there. They spoke in voices too deep for their small lungs. Their laughter turned cruel. Their eyes turned wild. And then came the crawling. The 9-year-old began to convulse. He bared his teeth at his grandmother, growling. Then, without warning, he leaned back and walked up a wall, backwards. Across the ceiling, no wires, no supports. He twisted his neck to stare upside down at a stunned caseworker and nurse, both professionals who screamed and fled. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't a dream. It was written into official medical reports. The Ammons family home had become a hellmouth. Desperate, Latoya called spiritual healers. They came, and they ran. The ones who stayed said the home was infested by more than 200 demons. They told her to anoint the doorways with olive oil, draw crosses in salt, and burn sage. She tried. She prayed. But the house only got louder. One night, her daughter was yanked by an unseen hand, thrown across the bathroom. Her head cracked the sink. Blood painted the tiles. She needed stitches. Another night, the girl woke up clawing at her own throat. She gasped and cried through tears. "It's choking me," I heard it say. "I'll never see you again." Then came the possession. Not stories, not suggestions. Full possession. The children's bodies would jerk violently. Their eyes rolled back. They howled in voices that weren't theirs. Strangers witnessed it. Neighbors, friends, caseworkers. One described seeing evil grins stretch across the kids' faces as their voices dropped to a growl that didn't belong in this world. Even Latoya herself began to change. She would black out, then wake up hours later, having no memory of speaking in a deep male voice, screaming blasphemies, her face twisted into a cruel snare. People said she was no longer alone in her skin. Finally, the state intervened. Child Protective Services took the kids. Not because of drugs, not because of abuse, because of something they couldn't explain. And then came Captain Charles Austin, a hardened Indiana police officer known for keeping his cool. He was a skeptic, until the house opened its eyes. His recording equipment failed the second he stepped inside. The air was heavy, like breathing through water. He heard footsteps in the attic, though it was empty. And in the basement, he swore he heard something breathing right beside him. He would later tell reporters, "I don't believe in ghosts, but what I saw in that house scared me. I was terrified." The final act came when a hospital chaplain reached out to the church. Enter Father Michael Maginot, a Catholic priest. He spent 6 months performing a full exorcism on the family. Holy water hissed against the walls. The prayers drew screams from the floors. Latoya writhed as if her body was trying to rip itself apart. The house shook. The priest claimed, "There are more than 200 demons in this home. It is cursed. It is claimed." During the final rite, a black mass rose from the floor and vanished. The walls bled oil. And then, silence. The family fled. They left the home, never to return. To this day, the house remains vacant, boarded up, rotting, but it still draws attention. Years later, an officer patrolling Carolina Street took a photo of the porch. In the image, a figure, tall, black, standing in the window. But the house was empty. This isn't folklore. The Ammons case has been covered by the Indianapolis Star, documented by social workers, doctors, police, and priests. Even now, it's considered one of the most credible cases of real-life demonic possession ever recorded. 3,860. Carolina Street isn't just a haunted house. It's a wound in the earth, something raw and bleeding. And if you ever walk by that porch, listen. You just might hear something still breathing inside. In the holy village of El Rocio, where pilgrims walk barefoot in devotion and the wind carries hymns through empty alleyways, something unholy stirred in a quiet home nestled just beyond the marshes. A modest cottage, white walls, red tile roof, and a rusting satellite dish became the stage for something the locals now whisper about in prayer. It began with something so mundane it was almost forgettable. Every night, at exactly 10:37 p.m., the family's television, an old flat screen in the living room, shut off. Not a power surge, not a glitch. It simply died. The screen blinked to black in an instant, as if snuffed out by an unseen hand. The room would fall cold. Still, as though something ancient was watching. At first, Lucia Marquez, the mother, assumed it was bad wiring. Her husband had passed 2 years ago, and she'd been raising her 2 children alone. She made a mental note to call an electrician, but the next night, the TV did it again, 10:37 p.m. The night after that, again and again. The 4th night, she stood in front of the TV, remote in hand, staring at the digits on the microwave clock. 10:36, 10:37. Click. Silence. The screen vanished. Black. Dead. She hadn't even touched the remote. From the hallway, her son Mario, just 6 years old, called out in a sleepy voice, "He's here again, Mama." Lucia rushed to him. "Who?" she asked, brushing the hair from his eyes. "The old man," Mario whispered. "He's sitting on the couch. He watches with me." She felt a chill deep in her chest, not in her skin, but in her bones. A tremor of something unseen, something familiar. That night she couldn't sleep. The house moaned. Shadows shifted in the corners. Her daughter, Alba, found the crucifix above her bed turned upside down the next morning. The silver chain still intact, no signs of tampering. Then the mug moved. She watched it, her morning coffee, slide slowly across the table without anyone near it. She didn't scream, she didn't blink. She only heard her father's voice in her mind. A whisper. "Don't be afraid of things you can't see, Lucia. Only things that lie." Her father, Ramon, had been a gentleman, but firm, protective, a creature of ritual. He had died of a stroke while watching his beloved football game, alone on that same old couch at night. After that, the disturbances became personal. Footsteps in the hallway, the smell of tobacco, her father's brand, lingering by the door. The television screen, once dead, now flashed images for brief moments during its shutdown. Static, then faces, blurred but eerily familiar. Sometimes, voices echoed in the silence, like radio static trying to form words. One night, Lucia returned home late from a shift at the hospital. The kids were with their aunt. The house was empty. She poured herself a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and turned the TV on. She stared at the screen. The home video began playing on its own. It was a recording from 2019, just months before her father's death. A barbecue. Ramon stood near the grill laughing, lifting Mario in his arms. Lucia didn't press play. She hadn't even selected that file. 10:36 p.m. Her breath caught, her skin prickled. 10:37. The screen shut off. And in its reflection on the black glass, he appeared. Ramon, sitting on the other side of the couch. His face was pale, drained, not warm like in life. His eyes locked with hers, deep, dark, unblinking. He raised his hand and pointed toward the hallway. Lucia turned her head. Nothing there. When she looked back at the TV, he was gone. But in her lap, where nothing had been seconds before, lay the rosary from her bedroom. The next day, Mario refused to go back to school. He had woken up in tears. "Abuelo was in my room," he said. He sat on the edge of the bed. He told me, "I'm proud of you. I'm going to look after you." That's what he always said when I got good grades. "It was him, Mama. It was him." Lucia collapsed into the kitchen chair. "That's what he said to you every time he tucked you in," she murmured. "That's exactly what he used to say." A paranormal research team from Seville came at her request. They arrived with gadgets, meters, infrared cameras. The team laughed politely at first, until the EMF reader maxed out in front of the television exactly at 10:37 p.m., despite no running electronics, no current, no wires. They reviewed thermal footage taken in the hallway. In one frame, just one, a human-shaped heat signature sat on the couch, but no one had been there. The final moment, the moment that made Lucia lock the children's bedroom at night, came a week later. The children were asleep. She sat alone, reading in bed. Rain drizzled softly outside. The temperature dropped. A gust of wind rattled the window, though it was sealed tight. She rose to check it. The glass was misted over. She froze, written in the fog. A name, traced in a familiar, deliberate hand. Ramon. No sound, no light, until the TV in the living room suddenly turned on by itself, blasting static. Lucia ran to it. As she reached for the remote, the static changed. A face appeared again, his face. But this time he looked different, sunken, hollow. He whispered something, barely audible under the hiss. "Let me in." The family still lives in the house. The television still shuts off every night without exception at 10:37. But now, there are rumors. A neighbor's child, passing by at night, claimed he saw someone waving through the window, an old man, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Others say the cottage is cursed. Lucia no longer tries to explain it. She simply says, he came back. Not to hurt us, but to stay. Maybe death didn't take all of him. And if you're in El Rocio and find yourself near that quiet cottage after dark, don't look through the window at 10:37. You might see someone staring back. There are places where time doesn't just linger, it festers. In the heart of rural Michigan, far from city lights and swallowed by pine-dark woods, stands a house the wind never forgets. The Mecosta County Historical Museum, once a humble 1880s family home, now squats like a dying relic at the edge of big rapids. In the fall, its silhouette is a black wound against a blood-orange sky, and locals speak of it only in hushed voices once the sun goes down. They used to laugh about the story of Abigail. They don't anymore. October 2022. The trees were already bare, their bony limbs rattling against one another in the wind. That's when Logan Aldrich, a 17-year-old senior at a nearby high school, decided to do more than just listen to ghost stories. He wanted to find one. For years, the museum had told children about Abigail, a young woman betrayed by a lover who supposedly flung herself from the second-floor landing in despair. It was a tale whispered during field trips to make history more fun. But Logan wanted to know what was real. With 2 friends and the blessing of Museum Vice President Julie Cole, he returned to the museum after dark. Not for a tour, for a hunt. They brought ghost hunting gear, a spirit box that scanned radio frequencies in erratic bursts, and a hand-crank flashlight, a tool often used in paranormal investigations for its simplicity. They also carried EMF detectors, audio recorders, and enough youthful arrogance to believe they were ready for what was waiting. They were wrong. Abigail's bedroom, 10:17 p.m. The room was still, too still. Old wallpaper, discolored and peeling, seemed to curl inward toward them like it wanted to listen. A brass bed sat like a tomb beneath a dust-laced window. No traffic sounds, no night birds, just silence and breath. Logan placed the flashlight on the floor in full view. It wasn't turned on. He spoke, his voice steady. "Is anyone here with us tonight?" Click. The flashlight turned on. The room froze. For 3 full seconds, no one breathed. Logan's friend, pale and wide-eyed, whispered, Did you touch it?" "No," Logan said, louder now. "If you're here, turn it off." Click. Darkness returned. Then again. "Did you die in this room?" Click. On. "Are you angry?" Silence. Then, click. Off. And then, the laughing started. Not out loud, not in the room. It came through the spirit box, a fractured, broken static, and within it, a giggling female voice, not amused, not playful, mocking. Julie Cole, present and visibly shaken, whispered, "That's not the story we tell kids." Something was wrong, terribly wrong. 10:41 p.m. The group split up. Julie and Logan's team took the stairwell, retracing Abigail's supposed final steps. The others returned to the landing. They were barely apart for a minute when it happened. Bang! A violent, concussive slam echoed from upstairs. The walls trembled. Plaster cracked. One of the girls screamed. They turned to run, and that's when they saw it. A wooden rocking chair, antique, unmoved for years, was sliding across the hallway floor. Not rocking, gliding. It passed the bedroom doorway like it was on ice. Its movement slow and deliberate, unnatural. No slope, no wind, no one near it. An EMF reader in Julie's hand spiked, red lights flaring as if a storm had detonated inside the house. "It was like something shoved through us," she later said. "And that chair just moved, like it was being pushed by a hand we couldn't see." Then the temperature dropped. Not gradually. Suddenly, breath fogged in front of their mouths. The smell of iron and smoke, like scorched blood, crept into their noses. One teen began to gag. Another fell to their knees, unable to move. Something was in the house with them. Something that had been woken. The photos. Logan had taken pictures earlier that day for documentation. Bright, uneventful. Sunlight through windows, empty rooms. But reviewing them later revealed something else. In 2 separate frames, barely visible in the light, a blurred silhouette of a woman at the bedroom window. Long, dark dress. Head turned. No features. Another on the landing, facing downward, her hands pressed to the railing. Watching. Waiting. Julie confirmed no one had been there. "It's not a trick of light," she insisted. "Those were figures, human shapes. They weren't there when the photo was taken." And there was one final image, blurred and shaky, taken just after the loud bang. The rocking chair, moving on its own. The aftermath. The museum board convened. Some wanted to bury the story. Others, horrified, couldn't ignore what they saw, what they felt. The legend of Abigail had been made up, A story for school tours, a lie. But now the lie had a voice that giggled from radio static, a voice that moved chairs and triggered EMF readings and answered questions no human could. A voice that might have been waiting in silence for decades until someone finally listened. We created Abigail, Julie Cole later told Big Rapids News. We invented her for the kids, but something was there that night. Something answered. Something watched us. Locals now whisper of other things. Locked doors found open in the morning, shadows flitting across security camera footage. Visitors feeling unseen fingers graze the backs of their necks. The museum remains open, but few enter alone. And the bedroom upstairs, the one that once only held a story, now it holds something else. So if you ever find yourself in Big Rapids walking past that old clapboard house, listen. You might hear a creak, a bang, or the soft, slow scrape of a rocking chair, moving just for you.